Welcome to the 64 Squares studio, where chess history comes to life, one classical battle at a time. A single miss, just a single slip, can decide the whole World Championship game. And this game number 8 of 1892 World Chess Championship is a perfect example of that. Hello everyone. Today we are traveling back to Havana in 1892, where the world champion Wilhelm Steinitz is playing a world championship game against the challenger Mikhail Chigorin. And this is game number 8. So far, they are both tied with 3.5 points each, and we both want to win badly. So this is the critical game. Steinitz is white and Chigorin is black. But by no means Chigorin is playing a boring chess as black, as you will see. Steinitz played e4, and we have the two knights defense of the Italian game with bishop c4 and knight f6. And in game number 5, where the Steinitz played knight g5, he was able to win that game in a very beautiful style. If you haven't checked that out, well, I have made a separate video on that. You can check that out. And he repeated this position again, because why not? d5 by Chigorin takes knight a5. So the same as the game number 5, takes, and we have bishop to f1, a novelty by Steinitz. So it was in this position on move number 8 that this position was never repeated again. In game number 5, where I already told you, where Steinitz won, he played bishop e2, and this is still considered one of the main lines, though the absolute best move is bishop to d3. But bishop to f1 was never a good idea for white because of this particular game. Steinitz maybe had something he had prepared in his home, but Chigorin on the board refuted the entire system. He played h6, knight to h3, and bishop to c5. Nicely developing, pawn to d3, so you can develop this bishop. And a beautiful move, queen to b6, the only move which gives black advantage. Now there is a problem. I'm going to capture the knight and then capture the pawn. And for that, you have to play queen to e2. And you are threatening the pawn also with check, right? So it makes sense. Maybe Steinitz actually saw this position in his home preparation. But there is a move which basically shatters this bishop f1 queen e2 idea completely. So pause the video already on move number 11. Try to find what Chigorin played, which gives him a decisive advantage already in this position. Okay. So if you decided to castle, that is the second best move. Still you have a good advantage. But Chigorin played an absolute best bishop to g4, just giving up a pawn with check, because if you capture the pawn with check now, there comes king to d7 and there is no defense against rook e8 winning the queen next. Or if you move the queen somewhere funny, then rook e8 check may leads to checkmate. Thanks to this bishop covering these squares, this bishop popping out here, and stuff like that. So this is so bad that the best move is queen e2, giving your queen for a bishop there. So this was not played. After bishop g4, Steinitz basically understand that he had blown entirely, and he played f3. Bishop takes h3, g takes h3, and very human move, not the best but very human move, long castle by Chigorin. You want to get your king to the safety, get the rook into the attack. There is nothing more human than this move. But this does allow Steinitz to come back to the game. But he didn't play that. He played knight to d2. This makes sense because he wants to play knight b3 and stuff. But c3 was the best move with the idea of pawn to b4, and this is very hard to mate, and this is the best white has. And basically the position is somewhat equal now if you find c3. But Steinitz plays knight to d2 because he's not playing for equality, he's playing for a win right now. He wants to get that king on c8. that's why he want to play knight b3, get the open a file for the rook. And Chigorin said, well, I'm gonna get your king first. And he plays knight to d5. Getting knight f4 ready. Knight to b3 by Steinitz, that's the idea. And a very tricky move by Chigorin from here onwards. Objectively best is bishop d4. So like you cannot develop the bishop, so b2 hangs. And if you play, let's say, if you take the bishop, then I just take back with the pawn and this rook comes to e8, that's just game over. So that's objectively best. But after knight b3, Chigorin finds maybe the entire sequence, I don't know how much he saw, but he found a very tricky line, bishop to b4 check. First of all, you cannot really block with the pawn. This was not played in the game. But if you block with the pawn, then I just take the knight, attacking the rook, and then I just take this pawn, and you are busted. If you take the knight, bishop hits the rook, hits the king, that's the game. So in our game, after bishop b4 check, bishop to d2 was played. This is the best. And a very tricky move by Chigorin in this position. Knight to e3, where you have to be extremely careful for white what you play here. Now, objectively best again is c3. And this is very inhuman because you are allowing knight c2 check, king d1. That's your only move because f2 is defended. Knight takes b3. And here you have to find this king takes c2, where you give up the rook with check. And let's say king b1. And okay, with black you can play this, provoke this, and go back to c5. And when the king takes, you just play rook h to e8. And black is just exchange up in this position. But this is the best white has. And white still has some black's king is not entirely safe. You can play like h4, bishop h3, and you can hope for something. But in our game, after knight to e3, a good move, Steinitz fall for a trap. He played bishop takes b4. And queen takes b4 check. And here, if you want to survive, you have to play king f2. But it is inhuman because black will just go back, and what your king on f2 doing? So here Steinitz played c3, and this is a huge blunder. Because now Chigorin switched the queen to the other side with check. And if you play king queen f2, then I just exchange and play, I first play knight c2 check, sorry. So the knight comes with a check, and then I can trade, and then I can take the knight, and then I can take the rook. Basically, I am winning. But that's the best you have, because Steinitz played king d2 and he blundered. This is a huge mistake. So pause the video, trying to find the winning continuation for black while I give you a couple of seconds. Okay. I hope you find this move, knight a to c4 check. And basically the king has no squares, has to go to c1. And this brilliant sacrifice, rook takes d3. A rook sacrifice, and this is what played in the game. And now there is no defense there for whatsoever. The idea is, of course, if you capture the rook, then queen e1 check, and the king has no squares, you have to block, and that's checkmate. So after rook takes d3, Steinitz did play rook bishop to g2, but here just rook h to d8, and there is no defense against rook to d1 check. So Steinitz just played a4, and even though there is a very beautiful move in this position which Chigorin missed, he played simple rook d1 check, rook takes d1, rook takes d1, and queen takes d1, and he just won the queen. And it was in this position at move number 24 that world champion Wilhelm Steinitz resigned the game. And Chigorin, for the second time in this tournament, is leading by 1 point after 8 games in this world championship game. So yeah, you resigned because you just lost your queen. By the way, the beautiful move I'm talking about is instead of rook d1, there is this queen f2, and this is cute. Had Chigorin played this move, this would be an immortal game. But yeah, still, this is a nice game. Idea is if you take, then this is an instant checkmate, and there is nothing else. You just have to give up your queen on a2. And that was the game number 8 of 1892 World Chess Championship, and an encounter where strategy met tactics, as we can see. Steinitz knight h3 was met with the brutal tactics by Chigorin. And well, this misstep in his home preparation cost him full game in World Championship, and Chigorin just played a beautiful game afterwards. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the chess history, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the 64 Squares Studio, and ring the bell so you don't miss the game number 9 and the rest of this legendary 1892 World Chess Championship. Tell me in the comments whose style would you have preferred in 1892, Steiny's very positional play or Chigorin's extreme tactical insight. Well, until next time, take care.